have been running in-person workshops very actively, both for adolescents and also for youth. So the focus is both on that. Today's topic being romance, and that too in adolescence, which is very, very relevant because, Nirmal has already talked about some of the aspects of the pandemic where adolescents are isolated and what are the effects it is having on them. And one among them would be the pressure on them by the social media, and also a lot of online sort of viewing things, whether it is the movies or serial or online dating and talking with people. Who is an adolescent? So any age starting from 11, 12, 13 and different organizations starting from UNICEF have different definitions. And it is usually between the ages of 13 to 19 and 19 to 24. Many people can still developmentally be an adolescent, but we usually call them youth. And my interest is also in youth because many of them continue to have the problems which adolescents whom you are all addressing and working with have. Okay, so adolescents have an important milestone of having to complete their development in different domains. And the domains are multiple. And the domains, when there is development, it doesn't happen either very parallelly in a straight line or serially. It is in some areas it is more, and in some areas it is less. So that's where you would find that physically it is very significant cognitively and emotionally, and a part of that is, and also relationship is the sexual part of it. The social is more towards the peers. Racial, moral, and spiritual are less, but they catch up towards the end of their adolescence and more towards the youth and later in their adult thing. So you would find that the social, the emotional, and part of the relationship is where the sexual aspects come in, and it is a very, very important milestone in adolescence. So what are the main targets and what are the goals of adolescents? It is mainly to establish an identity. Who am I? Not only in the self, but also in the society. And towards that, establishing autonomy because unless I develop who am I, it's very difficult to become an autonomous person. Establishing intimacy, and that's where the sexuality and other issues start. And it is also with other. For example, choosing a best friend, that is also important. Becoming comfortable with one's own sexuality, that's a very important milestone in adolescence. One's own even gender, whether I'm a male or female, and who am I attracted to, whether I am attracted to a male or person of the same, or I recognize as both male and a female, or sometimes I'm a male and sometimes I'm a female, and I'm attracted towards both the sexes. These are all very important in adolescence. And goals and achievement, that is towards your larger life. What are my goals? What do I want to become? And how am I measuring my own achievements? So these are very important aspects of adolescence, because a lot of the decisions which an adolescent makes in all these areas, they determine how they are going to be in their adulthood and in their later life. That doesn't mean that they cannot change, but adolescent time is a time, it is almost like when you churn the curds, the butter floats up, and that's very important because the butter has to float up at that moment to sort of complete the adolescence and then move on seamlessly into one's own youthhood and adulthood. If it doesn't happen, it's going to have a significant impact. So earlier, it used to be called, the adolescence always used to be called a period of turmoil, but not necessarily. Most of the adolescents go through adolescent period relatively comfortably, though there will be some ups and downs. Ups and downs are part of the necessary. But the sexuality is something which most of the people ask about, because that becomes a very, very different aspect. Parents are able to, and teachers are able to deal with some of the issues of academic poor performance, or with, even emotional and behavioral issues. But what we find it very difficult, especially in the schools and in young colleges, PUC first year and second year, is the sexuality issues. But that is also an important milestone. This is the period where emotions, which we are born with, every child is also born with emotions. Adolescent is the period where you develop nuances of emotions. And this is something which I keep telling. When you say red, we are born with red or blue or the green color. But if you go to a matching center and you ask about red, there will be 100 shades of red, shades of pink. And that's what happens during adolescence. So there are nuances of emotions, and one among the emotions is the love and the passion and romance and lust and all these things. So that is very important for us to understand, people who are working with the adolescents, and not to think that they are quite abnormal. The people, adolescents need to develop these nuances of emotions, whether it is sexuality or whether it is to do with other things. For example, kindness, compassion, empathy. These are shades of all the other things which we develop when we are an adolescent. And of course, more serious relationships and commitment to those relationships, whether it is a heterosexual relationship or it is of the same sex or in friendship also, or even to your own parents. People have been asking about sexuality. This is a milestone of a different type and quite difficult for most of the guardians and the teachers and other people who work with them. Physical and hormonal growths are important, and to a certain extent, the maturity of the brain, and as it sort of develops and develops more and more neuronal circuits to connect, and then influenced by the hormones. And there is a lot of emotional upheaval because we are developing as adolescents. The adolescents are developing the nuances. So when there are new developments, there are always upheavals and downtrends. And along with that, the hormonal growth and the physical growth and the development of the social relationship makes the sexuality issues in adolescent a very, very difficult age. On top of it, we have a lot of peer pressure, and sexuality is one issue where the peers consider that as a very important. Sexuality, drug abuse, these are all areas where people think that it is very important to stand out, to show somebody's identity and to establish who am I and an autonomy. That becomes very important. And today's social media feeds into it like a bushfire or a wildfire. And so the adolescents are affected by that also. Okay, so I would like to tell a small example from one of the manuals which I have developed, because Nirmal said that he works with rural children. And one of the examples which we do in the workshop is, there's a young girl by name Pushpa who studies in 9th standard, and she is good at singing. So her teacher takes her to one of the inter-school competition. There she meets a 10th standard boy by name Ravi, who brings her some water and helps her to go to identify the toilet. So they share some information, and thereafter, Pushpa's attention on the studies and even her confidence in her own sister, with whom she is very friendly, starts coming down, spends a lot of time daydreaming, thinks that Ravi is in love with her because he has sent a card to her or a message to her saying on her birthday, happy birthday. So she constantly preoccupied with Ravi, and at the cost of her education and also the trust with her sister and also her parents. What do we call this? Do we call this romance? Do we call this love? And that's the main difficulty which the adolescents have, to differentiate between what is romance and what is love. Because there is an interest, and that interest is a good milestone. Because many of you people have asked, at what age should we start talking about this, other sex and relationships and abuse and harassment? Yeah. Today, if you look at the papers and other pediatricians talking, they talk about, precocious puberty at the age of 9 because of the food habits and the pollution in the adulteration in the food. So we need to start talking about some of these issues, but we also it is not only dependent upon the puberty, but on somebody's maturity, mental maturity. That is very important. And that's where I think there is a lot of difference between when we call something a undying love in romance. Because people need to differentiate, we ourselves need to differentiate what is romance and what is love. Love is not only with a person of the opposite sex or the same sex, and it doesn't come only when you are, in adolescence or in youth or adulthood. It is more to do with concern for somebody else, giving them the autonomy and developing a lot of trust and confidence and very secure in that relationship. And it helps in negative relationship. If you look at the other side, the romance, there is a lot of insecurity because it comes momentarily and people talk about chemistry. I looked at that person, immediately there was a chemistry. I immediately fell in love with that person. I liked that person. What is this chemistry? Nobody can tell except that it is all hormones. And there is a lot of attraction. And at that time, you are only aware about the positive aspects of the person and not the negative aspects of the person. You don't understand both the strengths and the weaknesses. You understand only the strengths. And you are constantly preoccupied with that person. And that person, preoccupation doesn't help you in your other areas of life and daily living. In fact, it is an impediment. It gives you a sense of high, which is like eating a good gulab jamun or an ice cream, where it sort of stimulates the dopamine, which is the quick reward system. And there is a lot of, if the person doesn't respond, there's a lot of jealousy, anger, disappointment, and it leads to a lot of multiple other things, which we will see. The other related issues in sexuality is something, infatuation or crush, where often adolescent girls have with their senior teachers, or young adolescent boys have with their senior young teachers who have been recently recruited, look pretty and probably, interact much more than the next generation. So there is a difference in the hierarchy, and that's much more to do with the crush and the infatuation. Infatuation can also be towards a hero or a heroine from the movie world, or today's it could be TikTok people or the Instagram people. Passion is not only about the relationship, but somebody can be very, very involved with something, technology or with racing. So that is a different sort of a thing. Desire is something wanting. Lust is much more to do with the physical. Lust or karma is absolutely a physical need, which comes down once the physical need is sort of satisfied. So there are multiple nuances to this sexuality issues. And that is something which we need to understand. And often this is where the adolescents have a lot of problems in differentiating what is what. Especially somebody comes and sends a chit saying that this person loves you or has given a letter to you, would like to meet you. It's sort of all these things come together and they are quite confused. And I think they fail to understand their own emotions. What am I feeling? Is this feeling sustainable? Can I carry on with this? Is it helping me or not helping me? What are my other important goals in my lives? And that is something forgotten at that moment. And am I doing this just because I want to gain a brownie point with my peers and my friends? Or every day I'm seeing on the social media that is only the girls or the boys who have boyfriends and girlfriends who are popular? Am I behaving because of that? So these are some of the confusions of skills, which minor skills of, understanding emotions, analyzing, making a decision, seeing it as a challenge and having to work through the challenges. So those are some of the lack of life skills at that moment, and there's a lot of confusion. And of course, what is one's own responsibility and a reality-based long-term planning. Somebody had asked me in the questions, and we will come to the questions. And the related issues are all here, which I have said. Online dating, that has become a very, very big issue. And these are, again, though they are not, there is no person in front, and the person is only online. There is a lot of things which go on online dating, and people tell a lot of lies. They morph their pictures. A 9-year-old girl can appear like a 19-year-old girl and talk with a 43-year-old guy, a man who's pretending to be a 24-year-old man. So that is something, a lot of pornography, because there's so much of hormonal drive, jealousy and abuse. Yesterday, I was just walking in the park and I could see these young people. They were not adolescents, but they are youth. The man is actually holding that girl's hand and abusing her for talking with another man. I could hear that. I am going round and round. And it's almost like he's so driven by jealousy and he's holding her hands. And that she probably perceives as being possessive, being, you're mine. That sort of a feeling is what she's getting. And she likes it probably. And it can, many of you from the papers know that it can lead to murders. And if somebody is rejected in romance, it can lead to suicide. Often in the movies, we see that most of the romance starts as harassment. The heroine doesn't like the hero, but later, likes him because he helps her in some sort of a predicament or a crisis. That is sort of promoted by the social media. There can be a lot of drug abuse in relationship when somebody is in romance. Somebody can enhance them push them in towards drug abuse of either cigarette smoking or drinking. And there can be a lot of financial abuse also. So these are all the related issues. So we are not talking only about somebody being, falling in love with a girl or a boy or the same-sex person. We are talking about a variety and a lot of enmeshed issues we are talking about. And I am sure it is the same whether an adolescent belongs to an upper class or a person belongs to a poorer class who lives in a slum. The issues are the same. Only thing is, there can be, because of overcrowding, there can be a lot of abuse in the poorer class, but in the upper class, there can be very early sexual experimentation, permissiveness about sexual experimentation. But in the end, what happens is, in both the cases, the sexual experience is much early in life and can lead to other difficult situations of pregnancy. And somebody had written about elopement, because when we talk about this online dating, financial abuse, getting abused, coerced, it's not only, it starts in adolescence, but it can be a lifelong, journey for many, many people. And that's what I see. So it is not exclusive only to the adolescents. It could be to anybody, to a youth, to a middle-aged person, to an old person. But definitely it starts in adolescence. And today I would say it starts in pre-pubertal children. Because of the social media and because of the puberty and from the internet, they know so many things globally that they think that they have the ability to deal with that, when actually their brains are not mature enough to deal with that. So this is a difficult situation. You're not mature enough, but you have certain needs and you think that you have the capability to do it, but people and the children and the adolescents do not have the maturity to deal with that. It is one among the intense relationship, but all of us have difficulties in relationships. Building relationship is a lifelong process. And this is a, sort of an instantaneous, hormonal-driven, desire-driven relationship. So how should we prepare our children towards that?